To create project 3, I've got my project 2 open and I'm going to add a couple of new sheets. I'm not sure if the screen recorder is actually recording the very bottom of my screen, so you might not be able to see me adding those sheets. I don't like my sheets to, well, I like them to be at the end of the set of sheets. The first sheet will be for my portfolio, and the second sheet will be my summary table. For my portfolio, I am duplicating the Exhibit 1 on the project instructions. So I need my months, my end of month portfolio value, my monthly return, and my return relative. My months are located, I can just pull them from a company that I've already done. It uses the same months. And I'm just going to paste them and then format them to be the month in the year, not the month day in the year. And because I want to be able to copy data in my summary table over and just have it work perfectly, because my total values for my stocks are located in column E, I'm going to put the total value for my portfolio in column E as well. I will go to the first month, December of 2012, and start summing the value for each of my stocks. So my first one is Green Mountain. So I will highlight the December 12 value, add to it Perfect World's December 12 value, add to that JCPenney's December value, Ford's, and Crocs's. When I press enter, it should sum all those beginning values, and since each of them had a beginning value of 10,000, I know my total should be 50,000. And if I don't get 50,000, I know I did something wrong. If I copy that up, it should adjust for the cell references, and I want to format those as dollar amounts. Next, I want to generate the monthly returns. Since I already have those formulas in any one of my stock tabs, I can just go to one of those tabs, highlight that column, copy it, pop over to my portfolio, pop my cursor into F1 and paste it, and it should copy the formulas perfectly. Remember, you do not want a value for the first month of your 2-year period, so I'm just going to shade that cell black so I'll know not to input anything in it. Now, if you don't want these blank rows or columns to be seen, you can hide them. I've highlighted those 3 columns. I didn't highlight this part. I actually put my cell on the column header and use that to highlight all the columns, and then I can just right click those and just hide them. So even though they're there, you can't see them, and it makes things look better. Now I want my return relatives. To create return relatives, you just add 1 to your monthly returns. And then I'm going to just double click the grab handle to copy that down. It actually copied a return relative formula to December of 2012, which I do not want, so I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to just blacken that cell as well. And then because I want this to be bold and this to be bold and wrapped just like the word monthly return is, I'm going to click on Format Painter, and it's going to collect the formatting information from cell F2, and if I just click on the cell I want it to copy that formatting to, it will bold it and center it. So now I have Exhibit 1 complete. I am ready to create my summary table. So I'm going to copy the summary table into Excel. It's not liking that, I think, because I have some data there. I don't know what I did. I'll do it again. I think I forgot to copy. So Control C, Control V. There we go. I am just going to choose a larger font and then widen that first column enough so that nothing wraps around the cells, and then highlight all of these. Put my cursor between a column that I've highlighted until the cursor changes to that plus sign, and just double click and it will automatically adjust the row height. And I'm going to replace my ticker symbols with my actual ticker symbols. And just widen the portfolio one so it doesn't wrap. Okay, for these cells that I'm just going to highlight in yellow, I have a separate video on how to crunch those, so I'm not going to show you how to crunch these. But I'll show you how to, not on this video, the other video will show you those yellow cells. To calculate the first year's returns without a drip, I'm going to start my equation, pop over to Green Mountain Coffee Roasters, and I want my returns without a drip. So I don't want to work with column E because those include dividend reinvestment. Instead, I want to work with columns B and C, the prices and the dividends. This is my first year, so that would be from 12/12 to 12/13. So I'm going to take my 12/13 price, and even though Green Mountain did not pay any dividends that first year, I'm going to highlight the cells that would contain the dividends if Green Mountain had paid them, because what I'd like to do later is copy this formula over to my other stocks, and maybe some of my other stocks did pay a dividend during that first year. So sum my dividends and then subtract the beginning of that first year's stock price in cell B26, and then divide all that by my beginning stock price. And then I'm going to make all of my cell references absolute. So what I'm doing is putting my cursor on the cell, and then I'm pressing F4, which toggles between absolute and relative references. Anytime I'm referring to a tab other than the summary table, I'm going to use absolute references, and you'll see why later in the video. That is a percentage, and I'd like it carried out to 2 decimals. Now I'll do the second year without a drip for Green Mountain. So pop over to Green Mountain's tab after I start my formula with the equal in the open parentheses. I want the second year's ending value plus the sum of all the dividends that you would have received if you'd owned it in the second year, buying it here for the 75.54. Subtract the beginning value of that second year, which will be the December 13 value, and then divide by the beginning value. Make all of these absolute references. Again, the button that I'm pressing as I select the cell references is F4. A percentage out to 2 decimals. While I'm at it, I'm going to do the holding period return for the entire 2 years without a drip. So start my equation with the equal parentheses, pop over to Green Mountain. Now I just want this entire 2-year period and all the dividends. So my ending price plus the sum of all my dividends, subtract my beginning price, and close the parentheses, divide by my beginning price, make these absolute references. Percentage, 2 decimals. The with drip values or formulas use, actually I'll start my formula with the equal parentheses, pop over to Green Mountain. With drip, I'm going to use the total value formula or column, and since these already include dividends, I don't need to worry about them. So I'm working on the, I've forgotten what I was doing, so I'm going to pop back to the summary table. I want the first year with drip. So start my formula, pop over to Green Mountain, The first year will be from 1212 to 1213. So I'm going to work with this cell and this cell. So the 18,273 minus the 10,000 divided by the 10,000. Make these absolute references. The second year with drip will be working with 32,577 minus the 1213 value of 18,273 divided by the 1213 value of 18,273 and make them absolute. And then the 2-year holding period with drip will be the very last month's ending value minus the very first month's value divided by the very first month's value. Absolute references. Because Green Mountain did not pay a dividend that first year, but did pay a dividend the second year, if they didn't pay a dividend, then their with and without drip returns for that same year should be identical, which they are. Since they did pay a dividend the second year, the without drip and with drip numbers should be different. Since they paid a dividend at some point during their 2-year holding period, the 2-year holding period returns will be different. Now for the geometric monthly returns, I'm going to use the Geome function, pop over to Green Mountain, highlight, oops, that's not right. I've got to create return relatives. And I thought I had done that, but I actually didn't do it for all of them. So since I did calculate return relatives for my portfolio, I'm just going to highlight that column, copy it, pop over to Green Mountain, and paste it in G1, which will give me the return relatives. And I have return relatives for the other stocks already calculated. Now I can do my Geome monthly formula. So Geome, hop over to Green Mountain, highlight the return relative column. Oh, and subtract 1. Absolutely do not forget to subtract 1, and also don't forget to make these absolute references because I'm referring to a different tab. And on my computer, whenever I do that, it just carries my geometric mean out to a huge number of decimal places, but I just need you to format it as a percentage and 2 decimals. For my arithmetic mean, it's the average function, and highlight the returns, not the return relatives. For the arithmetic annual returns, I'm going to be working with the values that I'm highlighting in, I'll go with blue. So these 2 returns, so these are the 2 annual returns without drips. That's what I want to use my average, to calculate my average annual mean. So highlight that cell, comma, and that cell. For the annual geometric mean, I need to return relatives, and I just have returns. So down below, I'm going to calculate my return relatives for the first year and the second year by just adding 1 to my drip returns. So if I, oops, got to do my equal 1 plus the drip returns for the first year, and equal 1 plus the drip returns for the second year. And I'm going to copy that across, although right now it's not going to work right until I fill out the data for the other companies. But for my, oh, and actually let me point out, on the average function right here, I didn't make these absolute references because they're referring to the same tab that I'm on. I will not use absolute references for the geomean function for the annual returns either, because I'm referring to the same tab. And I'm just going to go equal geomean, highlight my first and second year return relatives, close my parentheses, and subtract 1, and adjust it to just 2 decimals. And again, these two are not absolute references. The rest of the formulas do contain absolute references. For my sample standard deviation on a monthly basis, I'm going to use the Excel standard deviation formula for a sample, open parentheses, pop over to Green Mountain and highlight just my monthly returns. These are percentages, so I will format them as that. And then for my annual standard deviation, I will take my monthly standard deviation and multiply by the square root of 12. For my, and because the monthly standard deviation refers to another tab, absolute reference is on that. But since the annual standard deviation refers to the current tab, I'm not going to use absolute references. For the ending value, we already have the number. It's just on this different companies tab. So I'm going to pop over to Green Mountain and just pull that total value number for December 2014, make it an absolute reference, and copy it down there. It's a dollar amount. And now I am ready to copy things over. Because I don't want to mess up which squares are black and which aren't. I'm not going to highlight down here, because if I copied it all the way over, it'd make this cell black. So I'm just going to copy it over like that and delete these because I know they're wrong. Then I'm going to copy this one over. Now, because I used absolute references and because it doesn't adjust for the tab name when I copy things over, right now everything just has Green Mountain's information. But if I highlight Perfect Worlds column, only Perfect Worlds column, I'm not going to highlight my whole table, just the column for Perfect World, and I go to the Home ribbon, and then Define and Select and Replace, I can use that function to search for Green Mountain Coffee Roaster in my tab, formulas, and I can replace it with the tab name. I'm using my tab names down here, and it'll replace in every formula where it finds GMRCR, it'll replace it with PWRD. And I want to replace all. And then and you notice that it changed the numbers now, and it should have Perfect Worlds numbers. Now I'm going to highlight JCPenney's tab, replace GMCR with JCP. Highlight Ford's tab, replace GMCR with F. And I see that I put CROS up here as my ticker, but it's not right. It's actually CROX. And that's what I want to replace it with, because that's the name of my tab down here. I'll fix the CROS in a minute. Highlight my portfolio. The market. And you absolutely must use the tab names exactly the way that they're named, otherwise it won't work. Oh, I have some problems with this one. And I'll fix it later. My problem is, see, this shouldn't have divide by zero errors here. My problem is I forgot to make this absolute references. So when it copied it over, it moved, since I copied it one column to the right, it changed this F column reference to a G column reference, and then to an H column reference. So I think the easiest way for me to fix this is just to edit these formulas instead of redoing everything. So all of these should be F's. I'm going to go ahead, sorry, I'm going to go ahead and take a quick moment to do that because I'm going to need these numbers. Actually, no, I don't need these numbers for the rest of the project, so I won't fix the rest of them. Okay. Watch the second video to figure out how to do the empty cells in your portfolio. I'm not going to bother fixing that yet, not on this video, but before you do the next step, what I would do is watch the second video, figure out how to do these blank cells, and then come back and pick this video up again. The next thing that we need to do, I'm just widening my columns because I need them wide enough to hold these dollar amounts they weren't displaying. Now I want to calculate my ending weights. I know the total value of my entire portfolio at the end of the 2 years, and I know the value of each of the stocks in it at the end of the 2 years. To find the weights, I take the stock's ending value and divide by the total value of the portfolio. The divisor will always be the total value of the portfolio, so I'm going to make the divisor absolute reference. This is a percentage, so I'm going to format it as that, and then I can just drag this over. Now I want to create a graph that plots the annual arithmetic mean and the annual standard deviation. That is the dominance graph. I'm going to copy these ticker symbols over and just paste special and use the transpose feature to make them go down instead of across. Oh, it has to look good. Now I want to copy the annual arithmetic means, so I'm just going to highlight those. Yours should not have divide by 0 for the portfolio once you've calculated the blank cells. But copy those, pop over to my dominance graph, place my cursor in C1, paste special values so it will copy the numbers and not the formulas, and then transpose so it will copy down and not across. And then back to my summary table and highlight the annual standard deviations. Control C, place my cursor in B1, paste special values, and transpose. These are percentages, so I'm going to format them as that. I need to fix that. It should be Crocs and not cross. Now to insert a graph, I go to the Insert ribbon, to the Charts section. This is the XY scatter plot. I do not want any lines, I just want dots. And I screwed it up. First I have to highlight these. Highlight my range of returns and standard deviations. Now insert XY scatter, dots. To add my ticker symbols as a label, I'm just going to left click one time on one of my dots to highlight all the dots. Now right click it and I go format or add data labels. Then right click it again and format data labels. And turn on value from cells, which will let me select a range within my spreadsheet that has the labels that I want to add, which are the ticker symbols. And then I'm going to turn off Y value. So now I have my charts. Now I need to give it a new title. I want it to be called the dominance graph. And I want to add some, man, I can't remember how to add axis titles. Here we go. Add chart element. I want to add a title down here. That would be the annual standard deviation. And then I want to add a title, oops, to the vertical axis, which is annual arithmetic mean. This graph is awfully small, so I could enlarge it this way, but I can also move it so it's on a new sheet by itself. Since I already have a dominance graph, I'm going to call this dominance chart. I can't have two tabs with the same name. That just makes it take up the whole screen. It's a little easier to print too. What I want you to do next is to circle the stocks that are dominant. And I don't want any fill in that. I can tell that I have 3 investments that are dominant, so I'm going to just copy this shape and paste it twice. This is dominant and this one's dominant. Then print that, and that's your dominance chart. The last thing that I'm going to demo in this video is how to calculate your simple weighted annual standard deviation. So pop back over to your summary table, and it's this cell right here. It's just the average of your 5 stocks annual sample standard deviations. All right, enjoy.